Welcome everyone for coming to the shir. We have a full house today. On the video, they don't know. We have a full house today, everyone. And I've been very excited about giving the shirim and getting really good feedback. And so many people, they hear about Rav Kook, they want to know about Rav Kook, and they don't really know much about what he says other than he's some sort of, they think a lot of people have the misnomer thinking that he's some modern Orthodox, quasi-Zionistic rabbi, and they don't really know about his teachings, So we've been exploring his teachings in a real way, in a serious way. And last week, we've been learning the Zeronim section, for those who are coming now for the first time. This is the Zeronim section, which is a section in Orot. Orot has a bunch of different sections to it. And this is called seedlings, Zeronim, because the Geula happens sprouting, seedlings. It doesn't happen in one shot. Last week, we began, and we finished, actually. It was the first few shirim. We're on the first piece in Zeronim, called Simaon L'Keil Chai, that desire and longing for the God of life. We finished that piece. And now, today, we're going to be starting Chochom Adif Menavi, that the wise person is Adif Menavi. The wise person is greater in a certain sense than a Navi. Now, I was thinking about how to introduce this piece. This is a fairly well-known piece from Rav Kook. It's one of his more well-known pieces. It's pretty short. We're not going to finish it all today, though. And, where something strange has happened, by way of introduction. Something strange has happened in the time period that we're living in the time period that started some time ago. And that is the reversal of history. Once upon a time, we were all in Eretz Yisrael. We had Shlomo HaMelech, we had Binyan Beis HaMikdash, we had Nevi'im, we had prophets, we had Rav Kook very, very much spoke about Nevuah in many, many different places, right? He didn't just want Eretz Yisrael, he wanted prophecy, Pashut Nevi'im, right? He had a student, many, for those who don't know, those who do know, on the WhatsApp group, I posted a picture of him the other week. There's so many good pictures of him, of Rav David Cohen. Rav David Cohen was one of the main students of Rav Kook. His name was the Nazir. They called him the Nazir. His son-in-law was Rav Goren from the army. He's the first chief rabbi of the IDF. Rav Goren was actually married to the Nazir's daughter. And the Nazir was an amazing man. And the Nazir's stated goal was to bring prophecy back to the Jewish people. That's what his goal was. And he saw prophecy, he saw Nevuah as not a skill or discipline to be learned from outside yourself, but he saw Nevuah as an inheritance of the people, something that all of us contain within inside ourselves. It's our most natural state, so to speak. And when we remove all the barriers, we remove everything, we would enter into a state of prophecy, that anyone could receive prophecy. We know in the times of David HaMelech, right, it says Shaul was one of the Bnei Nevi'im, right? There were just schools of Nevi'im. If you open up Sefer Shmuel, it talks about those schools very directly. And so there were hundreds of thousands, millions of Nevi'im in our people. And that's something that we all want back. Now the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Pizar achar Pizar, descent after descent. We go into Galus, and we lose Nevuah. But something strange is happening, right? And this is, Rav Kook is responding to this thing in a certain way, what we're going to see, which is the reversal of history, right? As we get closer to Geula, and the Jews come back to Eretz Yisrael, and once we're here, right, I think there's 7 million Jews here in Eretz Yisrael, 6.5, 7 million, right? Could be rove of the Jewish people are here. We start winding the clock back to what it was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, right? We start winding, as we go forward, in a certain way, we revert backwards. We revert back, hopefully one day, to the time of Adam Rishon and Gan Eden, right? What we started was, Ki Gan Eden Mikedem, right? We want to have that old time now, so to speak. So we went out into Galus. There was dissension amongst the people, right? We lost prophecy, and then we relied on the Chachamim, the wise people. And we're going to see Rav Kook is going to explain there's a difference between a wise person and a Navi. A Chocham is greater than a Navi, but a Navi is also, in a certain way, greater than a Chocham. And we have to wonder when we finish this piece why he labeled this piece Chochom Adif MiNavi, because he seems to plug prophecy over Chochma in a certain way. We'll come back to that when we get to the end of the piece. But Rav Kook, in many of his writings, again, is addressing this reversal of history, right? As we advance more, prophecy comes back, right? And prophecy wasn't just, as we were learning last week, seeing the oneness behind creation, right? Prophecy was this thing that allowed us to see the achdus, the oneness of God, right? And we had this amazing experience. I don't know, the name's Yeshaya. He was a prophet, but I'm not a prophet. And so he's coming up to address this. And with this, this was my way of introduction. He also doesn't bring the Gemara over here in Baba Basra, Yud Beis, is this phrase of Chocham Adif Menavi. And what the Gemara says over there, I didn't print it out, I'll just say it outside, is that when the Beis HaMikdash was basically destroyed, a Chacham became Adif Menavi. The wise person became greater than a Navi. We're going to put that aside, and we're now going to detour. We're going to go on a little detour, and we'll see how far we get a little bit today. And now what Rav Kook is going to say, he's going to say something amazing that I've never seen written in any place. And it's refreshing. It's refreshing to hear Rav Kook speak like this. He's going to talk about how there's two different types of personalities in this world. And there's a Chacham and there's a Navi. We have big picture people. We have the creativity. We have the creative personality. And we have the Chacham, who knows how to get things done. Right? The person's in the details. Right? And those are really two opposite. And that's going to reflect itself, just to preempt a little bit, is going to be somewhat of the difference between the Chacham and the Navi. Right? The Navi is this amazing person, this visionary, this creative talent. And the Chacham is like, doesn't know from that. He's just like, okay, what do we have to do to get the job done over here? Like, what's with these visions and things like that? And they're really two different people, two different personalities. They come from two different places. So with that, we're gonna jump in, and we're gonna read at least some refreshing words over here. Refreshing words from Rav Kook. Chochom Adif MiNavi. Benoheg shebe'olam, in the way of the world, the world's a custom. HaMeshoirim v'hamelitzim mitarim yafe es hadras hachayim b'chlal. The singers and the poets, HaMeshoirim, the singers, HaMelitzim, the people that have a way with words, the poets, mitarim yafe es hadras hachayim b'chlal. They're able to express, articulate in their music, in their words, the way of life in general. Es kol pinoseim hayafos beyichud hakololos zerem rav, in all its aspects, and together with its amazing flow, v'talachayim meruba, with the dew of life that's a lot. Hem yodim gam lahatzig lerava es kior hakali shalakil kolim shebechayim v'limchus negev b'chol tokef. Now let's just translate these words. Hem yodim gam lahatzig. They also know to understand lerava es hakior, to describe the ugliness haklali, general ugliness shall kol kilkum, of all the damage that's happened in life, and also protest limchos neged, against b'chol tokef, and all their strength. So what's he saying over here? That poets, singers, artists, right, they're able to reflect the feelings of the generation, right? Poets, singers, they're able to somehow capture in their imagination the reflection of what people are feeling, right? If you think of, like, they say, why was Picasso so great with his, if you'd follow the art of Picasso, right, you'd see that as he developed his artistry more and became later in years, his pictures became more geometric, right? And what he was reflecting in his pictures was the dissembly and the machineness of society, where people were just reduced to squares, triangles, and circles, right? He was reflecting the feelings of the generation. He was tapping into that thing, right? If you think about, I was thinking of Bob Dylan, like all the musicians, right? Like, what did Bob Dylan say? How does it feel to be on your own with no direction, a complete unknown, like a rolling stone, right? He was picking up the feelings of the 60s. He was picking up as a singer, as a poet, as a lyricist, and he was reflecting. Now, how do you put your life together? How do you get from point A to point? That I got no idea, right? But how can I reflect? How can I reflect the feelings of the generation? That is something that poets and artists and singers, the creative personality, is something that they know how to do very well. But to live in the details of all the individual happenings that happen in the world, how do you prepare life and stand life in a good way that has a very strong basis? Mikol kalkala gam katanav shebekatnut, right? And how do you protect it from all damaging, even from in the most minute and subtle of ways? Shesofa le'alo sirton gadol lehares harbe me'od, that in the end causes a huge storm. And lehares means like a hurricane, like to burn more than to destroy, right? How to protect something from destroying and imploding on itself. This type of thing has nothing to do with your imagination, with your creative abilities. It takes specific wisdom how to make something happen, to have a practical plan in order to do something. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and he mentioned to me in passing his taxes. So he's a well-known creative personality in the Jewish community. He's a well-known singer, and I'm just not going to say his name. I don't know if he wants me to, share this publicly, but he said he's like, I was talking to my wife about the taxes, and he's like, just numbers. I hear numbers and I get anxiety. I get stressed. I can't do the numbers. Other things I'm really good at. I got to be in this space over here. I can't do numbers. He's saying, right? Like you have a creative genius, someone who is so creative, right? But in the details, in the numbers, in the taxes, in the billing, and this and that, something he can't do. He falls apart around, It's a specific thing. It doesn't have to do with the koach hamadama, the force of imagination. Kan tachel avodas harofim. From here begins the avoda, the job of the rofim. Hachsanim, of the economists. Hachsanim is economists. Hamodidim are engineers. Hashoftim are judges. V'kol hachachamim hamaisiyim. Right? And all the practical wisdoms. Right? So again, it's like, he says over here, like the world of imagination, right? Nevuah comes from the koach hamadama, comes from the world of imagination. And it's really an amazing thing. I think about this as we talk about the reversal of history over here. Like, if you ask any person, any young person, what is it that they want to be when they get older? They want to be a creator, right? They want to be a content creator, right? Talk about being misdamin mibore, being close to the creator, walking in Hashem's ways. So what does everyone want to do? They want to be a creator, right? That now the creative mind is something that is valued of something par excellence, right? It used to be get a job, work 9 to 5, work really hard, and become good at your craft. To the younger generation, that's not a thing anymore, right? It's use your creativity, use your talents, be an advisor, something, But everyone wants to be a creator. As we reverse in history, they want to be like Hashem, right? Hashem's the ultimate creator, so they want to be like Hashem. The details, I don't know. I work 9 to 5. No, let's figure something out, right? It's not this. It's an amazing thing. One of the things I find refreshing about this is that he's explaining that there's two personalities. Like he's going to go on to say. Oh, let's read it over here. Lamala mizeh, and above this. Hanavua ra'asa is zerim hakalkala hagedola sha'avodah zara. Beyond this, the prophets, what did they see? They saw the great destruction of avodah zara, b'Yisrael umachaso negded b'chol oz, and they protest against the destruction that they were seeing with all their strength. Right? It's like you look at Yirmiyah Hanavi, right? Like, was Yirmiyah a failure? Right? He was supposed to stop the Beis Hamikdash from being destroyed. Right, and protest with all his strength against the people, right? Because that's what he was sent to do. But was he successful? Right? The answer is maybe yeah, maybe no. It depends on the interpretation of what success is. Following Hashem's word, he was definitely successful in returning the people to tshuva, to stop the Beis Hamikdash from being destroyed. Not so successful, right? All his strength, all his energy, he gave over to Klal Yisrael. But to get from point A to point B, okay, I see that there's a problem. I see that there's avodah zarah in the world, and you're all going to pay for this. He was sharp. You're all going to pay for this. He was able to feel that. He was able to sense that, right? He was able to give that over to people. To tell you a practical plan, exactly how to stop that he wasn't able to do, right? It says, Yeshaya Navi. Yeshaya, it says, believe it or not, it's a machlokas meforshim, how you learn exactly what happened, but Yeshaya was commanded to walk around with just a loincloth covering his private parts. He did this, I don't know, for like a year or something like that, saying you're all going to be left naked and embarrassed and shamed, right? I think it was Yechezkel. I think it was Yechezkel, maybe it was one of the other Nevi'im, had to walk around with a yoke, like a cattle yoke, like you put a cow in like something and it's like has these wood bars and like holds the neck. Walked around with a cattle yoke, showing like you're going to be herded away and sent into exile like cattle, right? Was he able to fix the problem? Lav dafka, right? Was he able to do something about it? Not necessarily, right? The practical details, they weren't able to figure it out. But they felt that there was a problem, right? So you see, like the leaders, the Nevi'im, they were reflecting the feelings like poets. Umachsa negdo b'chol oz, es hadras noam Hashem echad Elohav v'tisaeru b'chol yofi v'zohar, right? They were able to protest against it, to show es hadras noam Hashem, the splendor and beauty of Hashem echad Elohav, who's God, v'tisaeru b'chol yofi v'zohar, and show God in all its beauty. As hashchasa shel kol haparos hamusarios, they were able to also not only show the beauty of God, but again, the destruction of everything that was happening, of morality, ritzutz dalim, the running down of the impoverished, oshek evyonim, the sunkiness of the destitute, retzach v'niyuf, murder and niyuf, chamas v'shod, destruction and robbery, v'tamele ruach elokim leoshia, and to be filled with the Spirit of God to save, v'lagdor barom siach kodesh, and gird himself in order to be filled with the holy speech. Now, what's going on here, just to explain this a little further, right? That you have big picture people and you have detail people, right? And this is really Chochom Adif MiNavi, right? Chochom Adif Menavi is the split between the Navi is Torah Shebechsav, and the Chocham is a Torah Shebal Peh, right? That this big picture of seeing the forest from the trees, of seeing what am I doing here? What's the goal of life? What's the tachlis? Right? How do you feel about that? Right? As a therapist, always, how do you feel about that? How does that make you feel? How does that feel? How do you feel about that? Does you feel right? That's the Navi, because he's in touch with the feelings, right? Yeshaya Navi said, first parak of Yeshaya, and Chazal actually fry him up for this. He said to the leaders, even a shur knows its owner, even an animal knows its owner, but you leaders, you got no clue. You forgot about Hashem, right? Yeshaya also said, Svaso chavduni v'libuk rachok mimeni. Your lips seem to praise me, but your heart is very far from me. He was very critical, very critical. People actually really liked Yeshaya Navi, because even though he was very critical, he had rapport with everyone. So he went over to all the leaders and he'd fry them up, right? But they liked him because he had this alliance, he had this relationship with them. So they let it slide, not like Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah was like, he didn't have rapport with anyone. So they put him in jail and threw him into a pit. Even his own people in Anatot, they tried running him down. Parenthetically, for those who have been to Nachal Prat, you have to drive through Anatot. That's Yirmiyah's original hometown, right? Right? Echaz Ani Kohen Yirmiyah Hanatoti, from Anatot, right? So he's from that town. But either way, you see these different type of people, and this is reflected in Torah Shebechtav and Torah Shebal Peh. that you have people that are very much about the big vision of Judaism, and you have people that are very much about the details, right? So the question is, now that there's a reversal of history, right? So what do we do now? How does all this work? Because Chochom Adif MiNavi, that the Chocham understands about the details, right? And the Navi, he only understands, he sees the bigger picture, right? So like we were saying with that, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed and we lost Nevuah and everything went into the Chocham, right? Because in order to preserve Judaism for so many years, it needed to have in the details, you needed to be very, very focused on the details, on keeping halacha, right? Hashem's only in the Dalet Amos of halacha, right? But what happens is, as we go back to time, the bigger picture, Eretz Yisrael, Kibbutz Galius, Binya Beis HaMikdash, Nevuah, right? Even the fact that we could sit here and talk about Nevuah, that there was a man named the Nazir, who was a student of Rav Kook, whose stated goal was to bring back prophecy into Eretz Yisrael, into the Jewish people. It was an amazing thing. It's just an incredible thing that we could even have this conversation about Nevuah. And there are many pieces in Rav Kook that talk about Nevuah as well, but I'm not going to go into them today. I wanted to take a detour over here. I'm sorry I didn't photocopy this for everyone, this next piece, so you're going to have to bear with me. This split between the Chocham and the Navi, Rav Kook explains in another piece in Torah of Chutz La'aretz for Torah of Eretz Yisrael. This is in Oros HaTorah, Perek Yud Gimel. Those who could see, Oros HaTorah, holding it up to the camera. Perek Yud Gimel. There's a section here where it's Keta Gimel, the third paragraph over here, where Rav Kook he's explaining the difference between what's the Torah of Eretz Yisrael and what's the Torah of Chutz La'aretz. That there's a new Torah, and this is reflected really in what we're talking about here. Kol ma shehu shagor b'yachas shel Torah of Chutz La'aretz b'muvan haprat. Anyone who's familiar, shagur, like shagur b'piv, they're regular to Torah in Chutz La'aretz b'muvan b'prat. They understand all the details. Olahu be'erech Torah Eretz Yisrael l'muvan haklali. That will go and be elevated with the understanding of Torah Eretz Yisrael, which is the Torah of the klali, the Torah of the broad, the Torah, in our terms, the Torah of the Navi, seeing the bigger picture. Torah Chutz La'aretz osekes b'tikun hanefesh hapratit. The Torah of Chutz La'aretz, what's that work on? That works on the tikun hanefesh of the individual, right? It's about my olam haba, sheli, v'shalcha. How much schar in the world to come am I personally going to receive? Bedagat l'chumriyuta v'ruchniyuta. Worrying about your own personal physicality, I'll have the biggest house, and v'ruchniyuta, and I will learn the most Torah, my own personal avoda. It's Torah's Chutz La'aretz. V'lezichucha hitalos b'chai shah v'chai ha'olam. And working on myself, that I should try in some way to get above the momentary thing and get chai olam and get my own olam haba. Aval rak betur nefesh pratit. But that's only individual doeg, the individual person worrying about their own personal needs. And your own personal needs could be chai olam haba, l'netzach netzachim, right? Lo kain Torah Eretz Yisrael. This is not true with the Torah of Eretz Yisrael. Right now that we're reverting back in history, there's a reversal of history. This is not true for the Torah of Eretz Yisrael. He doeget tamid ba'ara klal. You're constantly worrying for the general, for the am, in a broad ba'ara klal. Ba'ad klalot neshama ha'uma kula. Worrying about the entire nation and all the souls in the nation. Like we have over here, the esteemed Maishi Deutsch, who every Friday goes and takes of his time and of his gas money, drives down to the Otef Aza, has never missed a week, and feeds around 1,500 soldiers. We have in our presence, worrying about the Am. And on his days off, he takes the food truck, and he also goes down to army bases and feeds soldiers with the food truck, right? It's worrying about the Klal. Hapratim, it's joining Am Yisrael. Hapratim hine mit kansim b'kirba b'klali. The Torah of Eretz Yisrael, all the details, they go and they form within the person and they become a group. Hey mit alim bi'iluya. All the details of a person's life now come together You know, it's like the lulav. All the different parts of the lulav come together, right? And they get elevated. Mit'arim be'atarata. They become crowned with a crown. Shehem, right? Ateres tiferes lamusei beten. He brings the pasuk. Shehem atidim lischadish kemosam lifar liyortzam al shem kavod malchuso. Right? We say this pasuk during Kiddush Levana, right? That the crown is going to be crowned, and in the future it's going to be revived in front of the Creator. And pasuk gam osa iloi shamin haprat le'aklal, and also elevating from the specific to the general. Al kol merchav haTorah, on all the expanses of Torah. Beyichud al merchav hayrayanot shel ha'uma veyiras shamayim be'emes, together with the feelings and thoughts of faith, of emunah, and yiras shamayim, and truth. Gam ze atzmo hu chidush niska v'nala shel Torah of Eretz Yisrael. This is also, he has a bunch of pieces on this. This is also the amazing wonder, the novelia, the chiddush of the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, right? So we have split over here. We have Torah of Eretz Yisrael and we have Torah of Chutz La'aretz, right? We have the Chocham, who is God is in the details, right? That's the Torah of Chutz La'aretz. But we have the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, which is the Navi. We have the Torah of the prophet, which is worried about the big picture. The Torah of Chutz La'aretz is my own personal avoda, my own personal olam haba, my own personal thing, right? Like, I always think, like, personally, like, when I was in Chutz La'aretz, you know, like, I never missed a day of mikvah for years upon years. Like, I never missed a day of mikvah. First of all, it was logistically easier. We had a very nice mikvah in Inwood, and it was just with the parking, you know, and you could go and go. It was logistically a lot easier, you know. But then I get here now, you know, I don't go every day in the way that I used to, you know. I used to do hispaitidus every single day in Chutz La'aretz, you know, and now I hope to get back to that, you know. And it's very much like, for myself, it's like, okay, you know, what's going to be with my olam haba? What's going to be with my chai sha'a? What's going to be with all that? So you have to ramp up the engines and really get going. But here in Eretz Yisrael, okay, so I don't go every day, and I don't do hispaitidus, and, you know, like, less worried about the personal avodas Hashem, less worried about my olam haba, you know, but it's about joining Am Yisrael. What can I do for the klal? What can I do for the Am? How can I take part in the soldiers, right? We have so many opportunities now to join the Am, right? Even in Chutz La'aretz, we could join the Am, you know, and even in Eretz Yisrael, you could also be worried only about your own thing, right? You could have Mochin de Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Nachman says, Rav Nassan says, you could have Mochin de Chutz La'aretz, the perceptions of Chutz La'aretz, also in Eretz Yisrael as well, right? And you could have Eretz Yisrael perceptions in Chutz La'aretz, right? It's not necessarily bound to the place, but it's bound to where you are. But certainly being in Eretz Yisrael makes a difference, you know. And this is why, one of the reasons, at least, that we see that there's been a huge resurgence of Tanakh, right? Of seeing the far, like, people in a certain way, and I'm foreshadowing a little bit what we're going to get to, what Rav Kook is going to explain, is how people are sick of, and we learned this last week, about feeling crushed by Judaism, right? Feeling that the halacha is so oppressive. So I keep halacha, I do this, I do that, but where does it all go, right? Where does it all, what happens to all of it, right? What about connecting to God, right? What about connecting to God? I really need that. If I rip the toilet paper in the way, right? I really need, so people find that oppressive. Now, I want to give a little bit of disclaimer. You have to be careful with this, right? Because what you could come and say, it's a little bit dangerous saying there's a subtlety here, right? Just want to be clear. I'm not saying that halacha is not important, and therefore, right, you have nevuah and you don't have to keep halacha, right, at all. Not saying that. But what Rav Kook is saying here in this other piece that I introduced, that we just saw together, that all the pratim come together and they're eloi to something greater, right? All the individualness, all the worrying about my olam haba, there's something bigger. It's called prophecy, right? You can have olam haba and olam hazeh. You have the prophetic experience, right? So Rav Kook explains as well in Mahalach the Ideo Yisrael, in the process of ideals of Yisrael. Very, very terse piece, very, very difficult piece. It's a long piece as well, and it's another section in Orot, right? He says that it used to be, right, when personal olam haba came into the picture, it was like a candle during the daylight. Like personal avoda, it's like if you were on the winning team, if your team is winning Super Bowls, right? Like, you don't care about your own personal. Like, even a superstar might get paid less in order to be on a winning team. Will they get more Super Bowl rings, right? It's because, right? If you're on the winning team, if you're part of the Am, if your team is winning trophy after trophy, your own personal superstardom doesn't necessarily make so much of a difference. And if you're a bench warmer on that team, you don't mind because you're winning Super Bowls. When the team is really bad and the team is a losing team, then individuals, the superstardom gets contrasted more, right? So when we're on the winning team, when we're part of the Am Yisrael, and as Am Yisrael comes back to Eretz Yisrael and the light of prophecy starts to fill back into the nation, so what happens? We're on the winning team. Right? So our own personal Olam Haba in a certain way doesn't mean as much because you're on the winning team, right? You'll be willing in a certain way to get paid less. Again, I don't want anyone to take my words out of context to say that do away with halacha or anything like that, because the ultimate is to have both. Right? You take the nevuah and you take the chacham and you bring them together and you unite them to two. Right? You take Torah of Chutz La'aretz gets united with Torah of Eretz Yisrael. Now Rav Kook is going to say this a little bit. We're going to read it a little bit more. Hasaros hadakos, the thin strands, shebehem mitztarfos ha'avot agala shel hachatas, and they come together to make a thick rope of the wagon. Gidei chayim hadakim, the sinews of life. Shemehen yisargu mizrike hadam hagedolim. With this, that the body is woven together. Yisargu means woven. Mizrike hadam hagedolim, that all the sinews are tightened together. Elahema hamistarim hasvunim me'en kol navi v'chozeh. These details of life and the ropes that combine the thicker rope, they are hidden from the eyes of the prophets and hachozeh, the vision, right? Right, Chaza and Yeshaya, right? That's the chozeh means the vision, right? Hamitzvos hamaisias kulan uprateim hilchoseim, the mitzvahs and the practical actions, all their details, b'chol diyukam hanimratz, and all their particularities, eich behemshech hazman al yidei kiyumam v'talmudam, how through the passing of time, fulfilling them and learning them, hergelam v'chibasam, your habituation to them and your love for them, yetze hanom hapanimi bahem, goes out, flows out from it, is this inner pleasure, v'zerem hachayim halohi hatohor yigaresh, and the flow of godly life and purity, yigaresh be'uzo es cheshkas avodas elokim mibli tuchal od kum. They banish away the darkness of avodah zarah mibli tuchal od kum, that it vanquishes avodah zarah. Ve'ech azivat ha'itit hamezalzelet b'ma'asim, and how leaving the hazivat ha'itit, like the nowness, hamezalzelet ha'maisim, right? There's something in the like aiton means the news, or ait means like itit means like the times, like the time period. Mezalzelet b'maisim gets destroyed with certain actions. Ba'anafim v'diyukim, with branches and particularities. Mipetachat derech shel heres, miftachat derech shel heres, opens up the way of destruction. Ma'abedet et kelim shabam yekalet haruach ha'elyon. It loses its kelim yekalet shabam yekalet haruach ha'elyon. Right. The details, the practicalities, right. The kelim that hold the or. Memela yetzer leiv ha'adam. Amimale yetzer leiv ha'adam, that fills the inner heart of man. Hadimyon hamita'eh hamale tzitzei zohar mebechutz ve'avak ra'al mebifnim, the imagination that mita'eh, that fools a person, hamale tzitzei zohar, that also gets filled with lights of splendor mebechutz, from outside, ve'avak ra'al mebifnim, and the poison that goes inside, hu holech va'ole me'elav, that goes on its own. Right, the dialectic of life, the balance of life, the darkness and the light, the poison and the remedy, right? The end of life. I always think, like, we're not good with ends. This is good, and that is good, right? This is bad, and this is good, right? Holding the dialectic, the grayness of light, the bothness of light, of life, that goes on its own. Davar zeh lo niten lenavua klal, lenavua shal aspa klaria she'ena me'ira. This type of thing was not given over to the Navi. This was not given over to the Navi at all through a not clear looking glass. Amnam, however, nitain lenavuaso shel Moshe, also hanavua shel peh al peh. However, who was this given over? To understand the details of life, the endness of life, the big picture of life, and the details simultaneously. That was given over to Moshe, who saw light through a clear looking glass. Shirak hi yechol liros uzam shel haklalim. Only Moshe, the ultimate prophet, was able to see yechol lirot uzam shel haklalim, the strength of the big picture. V'diyuk nusam shel hapratim ke'echad. Moshe was the only one who was able to see the big vision of life, the creativity of life, and simultaneously the chacham of life, the wisdom of life, the details of life, how all the details and sinews, the practicality of life come together in order to make a plan, in order to have geula. Now, just to foreshadow this as we wind down for today, right, that what Rav Kook is dealing with is the tension of the big picture, the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, the Tanakh, right? How many people don't learn Tanakh, right? What's our goal? Where are we heading? What are we doing with ourselves, right? Eretz Yisrael, Binyah Beis Hamikdash, Nevuah, Kibbutz Galias, versus the details. For 2,000 years, we were stuck in the details. Ever since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Chochom Adif MiNavi, the prophet became better. But now, as Nevuah comes back, and Ruach HaKodesh starts to come back to our nation, and Moshe Rabbeinu will come back at some point, right? Who Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who understood the Hitkolulus, the Torah of Eretz Yisrael and the Torah of Chutz La'aretz, that the Torah of Chutz La'aretz gets absorbed into the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, and Nevuah comes back. How do we navigate that tension, right? What do we do? Is it only about, no, I'm going to double down on learning Torah. We're not going to go to the army. We're only going to hunker down and work on the details. Or is it, no, we're only going to go to the army. We're going to forget about the religious, right? The religious are psycho. All they want to do is learn. We have Ben Gurion. We have Herzl. We have strong national ideas. We look at the big picture. You don't need the details anymore. You have the big picture. Here we are. For 2000, right? I recently saw, it was like Ben Gurion, it was Herzl, right? He felt that Judaism was pickled for 2,000 years, and we needed religion in order to preserve us. But now that we have Eretz Yisrael is going to preserve us, right? It's going to pickle us in that way, right? So this tension between the big picture and the details, and just hunkering down on my own personal olam haba, my own personal thing, and not joining the Am versus I don't need that. I'm just going to join the Am. Joining the Am is going to be the thing that saves me. And finding the tension to do, right? This is what we're doing nowadays here in Eretz Yisrael. We're trying to figure out that balance, that tension. How do we merge the two, right? And this is all part of the process of the regaining of Navi, of Nevuah, right? Finding the balance between the two, as Rav Kook is going to say. Rav Kook is going to say that, right, again, the poets, they reflect, they're the big pictures, they're the creative personalities, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu is eventually going to come back. And not only that, Mashiach is going to be higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. So we're going to have the national idea and the religious idea put together in one thing, right? And we're going to have this Chochom Adif MiNavi, right? So we're working on this tension, and we'll continue next week, everyone.